أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. So today we are going to be discussing the expeditions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the Sahaba. Now, to make it easy, what is the meaning of expedition? So expeditions refer to organized journeys, travels, or voyages, typically for a specific purpose, such as exploration, scientific research, adventure, or conquest. Now, what does this has to do with the Battle of Badr? You see, in Mecca, there were no military developments. The Prophet ﷺ never for once did anything military in Mecca. In Mecca, the Muslims were told to turn the other cheek, turn away from them, endure with beautiful patience. Whatever they do to you, trust in Allah. All these things keep surfacing from the Prophet to the companions. And they are all rooted in the Quran. Turn away from them. That is actually in Quran, chapter 32, verse 30. Endure with beautiful patience. That is in the Quran, chapter 70, verse 5. Whatever they do to you, trust in Allah. That is in Quran, chapter 26, the verse 216 to 217. And following all these instructions from Allah, the Muslims were told to remain patient, even though the Sahaba were literally torn to shreds, like Yasir, Sumayya, Bilal, etc. Think about it. Technically, the Prophet ﷺ could have told one of the Sahaba to kill the persecutor of Bilal, the person punishing Bilal all the time. But he understands that this is not the right way to do things. And he understands the repercussions. And that is a lesson for us to learn. Before we take an action, let's always think of the repercussion. I believe the reason why this world has the problems it has today is simply because we have men who act on their impulses. They do not take time to think of their repercussions. That is why you have things like school shooters, kidnappers, ritualists, armed robbers, assassins. These people do not think twice. They just act impulsively most of the time. But when you have a man who always thinks about repercussions, you are going to have a good man. Because we know if I kill someone, they are going to kill me back. Repercussion. If I attempted a burglary, if I'm caught, I'm going to be sent to court, and from there to prison. I won't have time for myself again, my kids, my family. My family will be ashamed of me, all those kind of things. I'm a good man, always thinking of repercussions. Now back to the history. One needs to think 10 steps ahead and not just one step ahead. Even if Bilal is suffering, to kill his persecutor named Umayyah ibn Khalaf would bring much more persecution, and the Ummah cannot bear it now. So if we send someone to kill the person persecuting Bilal, that will only increase the punishment they will be given to all the Sahaba. And the Muslim Ummahs at the time cannot bear that kind of thing. So one must look at the overall picture and weigh the benefits and negatives. In Arabic, this is called masalih and mafasid, the pros and the cons, the benefits and the harms, the good side and the drawbacks. So for the Prophet ﷺ and the Muslims, there were many reasons for these expeditions after they reached Medina. There were many reasons for them to always take on these journeys, these voyages, to do some certain things. And they had some specific goals. The first goal and their main goal was to show the Quraysh that the Muslims had not fled weakly to Medina, but rather they had fled and now will fight back and regain what was taken from them, to illustrate and establish that the Muslims are now independent political and military force. And note, that for the first few years, up until the Battle of Khandaq, which we will be discussing later, the Muslims only targeted the Quraysh alone as their enemy. They do not do all these expeditions, all these journeys to attack other tribes, except for Quraysh alone. So if they were a band of thieves, like some people used to claim, they will not be aiming at Quraysh. They will be looking for easy pickings, other travelers on the road. But they have a strong history with Quraysh. Quraysh seized a lot of their properties before they left Mecca. This is just for argument's sake, and we are not here to talk about argument, we are here to tell us our history. So I'll just continue. So no other Arab tribes were targeted unless they attacked first. So the second reason for these expeditions is to cut off the sustenance supply, the oxygen supply, that is the money from the Quraysh. The Quraysh got their oxygen, that is their sustenance, their money, their connection, everything they have. They got it from something called Rihlat, al-Shittā, al-Ṣayf. So that means the winter and the summer trip. Rihlat al-Shittā, al-Ṣayf translates to the journey of the winter and the summer in English. This phrase appears in the Quran, Surah Quraysh. لِإِيلَافِ قُرَيْشٍ إِيلَافِهِمْ رِحْلَةَ الشِّتَاءِ وَالصَّيْفِ. So, this chapter of the Quran is actually referring to the seasonal trade or journeys of the Quraysh tribe. They traveled to Yemen in the winter for warmth and goods. And during the summer, they traveled to Syria, which is Sham, to trade in grains, clothes, luxury items. These journeys were essential for their economic prosperity and survival. Without this linkage, the Quraysh will have collapsed. So without the Rihlat al-Shittā al-Ṣayf, without these two journeys, the Quraysh would have collapsed. So this is what brought Izzah and economic prosperity to Quraysh and made Mecca the center of the entire Arabian Peninsula. So their ability to travel, to do trade, made them so powerful then. So the Prophet ﷺ wanted to attack both Rihlat al-Shittā al-Ṣayf, these two journeys. The Prophet ﷺ wanted to attack them. So to go to Yemen from Mecca, the Quraysh had to pass right by Medina to get to Rome. They have to travel too near, very near, so near to Medina. If they want to carry all their goods and travel down to what? To Yemen, they have to pass very closely to what? To Medina. So to go to Yemen from Mecca, the Quraysh had to pass right by Medina to get to Rome, or rather a city called Bosra, so which was right at the top of the Byzantine Empire. They had to pass by Medina, and to this day, there are still ruins of trading places that made Bosra famous. The same trading places that the Quraysh went to back then still exist until today. So the Prophet ﷺ wanted to cut off these lifelines of the Quraysh, especially the one to Syria. And they also attempted Yemen, as we will discuss later. And this shows the strategy of the Prophet ﷺ. So the third reason why they go on these expeditions is to increase the size of the Islamic State, to make treaties with neighboring tribes and make the Islamic new state larger. And this is something that happened clearly after the Battle of Badr and the Battle of Uhud, which is 2 years and 3 years after the Hijrah, the emigration of the Prophet from Medina. So Medina expanded in size, neighboring tribes form alliances, so they become larger and larger. Now, since we've known the aim of all these travels, what are the types of military expeditions or military journeys in Islam? The scholars of Seerah, that is the scholars of story, mention two types of Islamic expeditions or military expeditions. The first one They used to call them Ghazawat. So singular is Ghazwa. So what is a Ghazwa? A Ghazwa is any military expedition that the Prophet ﷺ himself accompanied them. And of course, anytime the Prophet accompanies, he is always the commander. So Ghazwa is typically translated as war or battle. So anytime they are making a military travel and the Prophet is within them, that is Ghazwa. And the second one is called Seerah, and the plural is Saroya. So Saroya refers to a military expedition or a small battalion sent by the Prophet ﷺ, usually led by a companion as the commander, while the Prophet himself remained in Medina. Now, those are the two types of military expeditions. Now the question is, how many Ghazawat and how many Saria were there?